The summer of 1912 brought a peculiar silence to Schönbrunn Palace, as if the sprawling gardens themselves held their breath in anticipation. Through the kitchen windows, Daniel Kessler watched as the imperial gardeners trimmed the hedges with mechanical precision. 7 years as assistant cook in the Habsburg court had taught him to appreciate these moments of stillness before the chaos of preparation began. Kessler. The apricot dumplings won't make themselves. Herr Moser, the head chef, barked from behind a copper pot. His Imperial Majesty expects perfection tonight. Yes, Herr Moser. Daniel wiped his hands on his apron and returned to his workstation. Emperor Franz Joseph might be 82, but his appetite remained that of a much younger man. The kitchen staff whispered that food was his last remaining pleasure, now that Empress Elizabeth was long dead and the heir Franz Ferdinand increasingly estranged. Daniel worked methodically, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. He had come to Vienna from a small village near Salzburg, the son of a baker with dreams larger than their modest shop could contain. The imperial kitchen had been his salvation and his prison, a place where his talents were recognized but rigidly controlled within the palace hierarchy. As he worked, voices drifted through the window from the parterre garden. Unusual, as this section was rarely frequented by the court in the afternoon heat. "You must make an appearance at tonight's reception, Your Highness. The Emperor has specifically requested it." The stern voice belonged to Countess Lurven, notorious for her rigid enforcement of protocol. "I'm afraid I've developed a terrible headache, Countess." The second voice was softer, musical despite its obvious reluctance. "Perhaps if I rest until evening." "This would be the third engagement you've missed this month. People are beginning to talk." Daniel couldn't help glancing out the window. The Countess stood like a black-clad sentinel beside a young woman seated on a marble bench. Even from this distance, he recognized Princess Katerina Habsburg, the Emperor's grandniece, a peripheral figure at court, seldom seen at major functions. "Let them talk," the princess murmured, though her shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'll attend." After the Countess departed, the princess remained motionless, staring at the carefully arranged flower beds as if seeking answers among the blooms. Daniel had seen her occasionally during formal dinners, always seated far from the Emperor, her presence seemingly an afterthought. There were always rumors in the palace, that she had fallen from imperial favor after some unspecified transgression years earlier. He returned to his dumplings, pushing aside his curiosity. The lives of the imperial family were not his concern. That evening, as Daniel arranged tiny marzipan fruits on a silver tray, the usual pre-reception commotion filled the kitchen. Footmen hurried through with trays of champagne, while Herr Moser shouted contradictory instructions to a harried apprentice. "You, Kessler!" Moser gestured impatiently. "Take these canapés to the blue salon. The regular footman has disappeared, and we're shorthand." Daniel hesitated, uncertain. Kitchen staff rarely ventured into the reception rooms during events. "Now, Kessler! And mind you stay along the walls. You're not to be noticed." The blue salon glittered with crystal chandeliers and gilt-framed mirrors that multiplied the gathered nobility into infinity. Daniel moved carefully along the periphery, offering his tray to guests who barely acknowledged his existence as they took the delicacies he had spent hours perfecting. In a quiet corner, partially hidden behind a potted palm, stood Princess Katerina. Unlike the other ladies in their vibrant silks and satins, she wore a high-necked gown of pale blue that seemed deliberately designed to fade into the background. Her dark hair was simply arranged, adorned only with a single pearl clip. As he approached, she looked up, and Daniel was struck by the quiet intelligence in her eyes. "Your Highness." He bowed, extending his tray. "May I offer you a selection?" She studied him with mild surprise, as if unused to being directly addressed. "You're from the kitchen?" "Yes, Your Highness." Assistant cook Daniel Kessler. "You're the one who makes those wonderful almond pastries served at breakfast?" Daniel couldn't hide his surprise. "Yes, Your Highness." "I'm honored you noticed." "Food is one of the few sincere pleasures at court," she said with unexpected candor. "Everything else is wrapped in pretense." She selected a canapé, then hesitated. I saw you at the window today. In the garden. Heat crept into Daniel's face. I apologize for any intrusion, Your Highness. No intrusion. Simply an observation. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. How strange that you likely know more about me from palace gossip than I know about you, yet you've provided me daily sustenance for years. Before Daniel could respond, Countess Lurven materialized beside them, her expression frosty. Your Highness, the Bulgarian envoy has arrived. Your presence is requested. Her gaze slid dismissively over Daniel. Kitchen staff should remain by the wall, not engaging with guests. The fault was entirely mine, Countess, Princess Katerina said. I was complimenting him on his exceptional culinary skills. As the Countess led her away, the princess glanced back at Daniel with an unreadable expression that lingered in his thoughts long after he returned to the kitchen. The following week brought unseasonal rain that trapped the court indoors. Daniel found himself experimenting with a new pastry recipe during a rare quiet afternoon, when a kitchen page appeared at his elbow. Message for cook Kessler, the boy said, handing over a folded note before disappearing. The paper was fine quality, the handwriting elegant, *, I find myself with a peculiar request. The palace orangery contains several Sicilian citrus varieties I've been told make exceptional candied peel. Might you advise on their culinary potential? The groundskeeper has been informed you have permission to inspect them. K.H. Daniel read the note twice, uncertain of its implications. Was this a genuine culinary inquiry or something else? Either way, ignoring a request from a member of the imperial family was unthinkable. He sought out Herr Moser, who waved him away with unexpected indulgence. By all means, investigate these citrus fruits. Any opportunity to enhance our offerings to the imperial table should be pursued. The orangery stood at the far end of the garden, its glass panes beaded with raindrops. Inside, the air was warm and fragrant with citrus. Princess Katerina stood among the potted trees, dressed simply in a walking skirt and jacket, looking more like a lady's companion than an imperial princess. Your Highness, Daniel bowed. I received your note about the citrus varieties. Thank you for coming, Herr Kessler. I hope I didn't disrupt your duties. Not at all. Though I must admit some confusion about why you'd seek my opinion specifically. She moved among the trees, touching a glossy leaf here, a green fruit there. Because you're the only person in this palace who has ever spoken to me as if I were a human being rather than a disappointing ornament. The frankness of her statement caught him off guard. I'm sure that's not, it is precisely true. She turned to face him. Do you know what they call me in the court? The Forgotten Princess. A failed diplomatic tool, tucked away in the palace's back corridors. Daniel remained silent, uncertain how to respond to such candor from a member of the imperial family. I apologize, she said after a moment. That was inappropriately personal. I truly did want your opinion on these citrus fruits. I've been reading about Sicilian cooking traditions, and thought perhaps. She trailed off. They would indeed make excellent candied peel, Daniel said, grateful to return to familiar territory. This bergamot would be particularly fine. The oils in the skin would give it a distinct flavor. She smiled, seemingly relieved by his response. Would you show me how it's done? Not now, of course, but perhaps another time. It would be my honor, Your Highness, though I'm not certain it would be permitted. I still retain some privileges of my position, despite everything, she said with unexpected bitterness. Including the right to learn about culinary arts if I so choose. As they walked among the citrus trees, the princess spoke of books she'd read, dishes she'd encountered during her limited travels. Daniel found himself responding with increasing ease, sharing his own knowledge of regional cooking techniques. She listened with genuine interest, asking insightful questions that revealed a keen mind. May I ask, Your Highness, why you've developed such an interest in cuisine? Her expression clouded slightly. When one's life is circumscribed by others' expectations, one finds freedom where one can. Books, gardens, the study of food, these are pursuits that can be enjoyed without permission. She plucked a leaf, rubbing it between her fingers to release its scent. Besides, cooking transforms simple ingredients into something greater than their parts. There's hope in that transformation, don't you think? The rain intensified, drumming against the glass roof. The princess glanced at the clouded windows. I've kept you too long. You should return before you're missed. It was no imposition, Your Highness. Katerina, she said suddenly. When we're alone, I'd prefer you called me Katerina. Daniel felt a flutter of alarm. That would be highly improper, Your Highness. More improper than a princess hiding in the orangery with a cook. Her smile held a trace of mischief that transformed her face, revealing the young woman beneath the royal facade. We are already breaking convention, Herr Kessler. We might as well be comfortable while doing so. As Daniel returned to the palace through the rain-soaked gardens, he knew he was stepping onto a dangerous path. Yet he couldn't deny the pull of her intelligence, her unexpected vulnerability. In the carefully stratified world of the Habsburg court, such connections were forbidden, yet somehow, in the humid confines of the orangery, those boundaries had momentarily dissolved. Over the following weeks, Daniel found himself drawn into an unlikely friendship with the princess. Notes would appear, requesting his presence in the orangery or the small kitchen garden, ostensibly to discuss some culinary matter. Each meeting revealed more of Katerina's true nature, her quick mind, her dry wit, her surprising knowledge of politics and literature. How did you become so well-read? He asked one afternoon as they examined herb plantings. My father believed in education, even for daughters, she replied. Before his death, he ensured I had tutors in history, languages, sciences. The emperor found it eccentric but indulged him. Her expression darkened. After father died, I became a minor asset to be deployed for the empire's benefit. Is that when you came to Schönbrunn? Yes, at 16. I was to be prepared for a diplomatic marriage. She bent to crush a sprig of thyme between her fingers, inhaling its fragrance. But I proved disappointing in that regard. Daniel sensed the pain behind her casual tone but didn't press. Instead, he showed her how different herbs work together, which ones strengthened others' flavors, which provided contrast. She absorbed the information eagerly, occasionally making notes in a small book she carried. One rainy afternoon, they took shelter in a small gardener's shed. Katerina sat on an upturned bucket, watching as Daniel demonstrated how to properly sharpen kitchen knives on a whetstone he'd brought. You know, in another life, I might have been a cook, she mused. I find the precision of it satisfying, the transformation of raw ingredients into something harmonious. And I might have been a musician, Daniel replied. My mother insisted I learn violin as a child. She believed it would give me culture. Do you still play? No time. And no instrument. That's easily remedied. She looked thoughtful. There are dozens of unused instruments in the palace. The following week, a violin appeared in Daniel's modest quarters, with only a note, asterisk for when you have time. The gesture moved him deeply. No one had taken such personal interest in him since his mother's death years earlier. He began practicing in the early mornings before kitchen duty, his fingers slowly remembering their former skill. As summer progressed, Daniel noticed subtle changes in Katerina. She stood straighter, spoke more confidently, and occasionally even wore brighter colors. She began appearing more frequently at court functions, though she still kept to the periphery. During one of their meetings in the kitchen garden, she confided the reason for her court seclusion. 5 years ago, I refused a marriage arranged by the emperor to an elderly Romanian count who needed an imperial connection. It would have benefited Austria-Hungary's position in the Balkans. That seems a harsh punishment for wanting some choice in your own life, Daniel said. The punishment wasn't for refusing the marriage, she replied. It was for how I refused it. I publicly embarrassed the emperor and the count at a state dinner. A flash of the rebellious spirit he'd come to recognize lit her eyes. I announced I would sooner take religious vows than marry a man who had buried 3 wives before their 30th birthdays. Daniel couldn't suppress a smile. That would certainly cause a diplomatic incident. Indeed. I was banished from court for a year, then permitted to return in this half-existence, present but ignored, maintained but not acknowledged. She brushed soil from her hands. The emperor has a long memory for slights. As autumn approached, their meetings continued, though less frequently as palace activities intensified with the return of the court from summer residencies. Daniel found himself looking forward to her notes with an eagerness that both thrilled and alarmed him. He recognized the danger in his growing feelings for Katerina, but couldn't bring himself to end their friendship. During the preparations for the emperor's name day celebration, Daniel worked nearly 20 hours a day. He had been tasked with creating a spectacular centerpiece for the imperial table, a sugar sculpture of Schönbrunn Palace itself. For 3 days, he barely slept, meticulously constructing the delicate creation. The morning of the celebration, he was adding final touches when a commotion erupted in the main kitchen. Countess Lurven swept in, her face set in grim lines. "Where is cook Kessler?" she demanded. Daniel stepped forward, wiping his hands. "Yes, Countess. You have been meeting clandestinely with Princess Katerina Habsburg." "It wasn't a question. These assignations have been observed and reported to me." The kitchen fell silent. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. "We have discussed culinary matters, Countess. The princess has an interest in, spare me your excuses." Her voice cut like ice. "You have taken advantage of Her Highness's isolation to insert yourself inappropriately into her confidence. This ends now." "There has been no impropriety," Daniel insisted, though his heart pounded. "We have only talked." "A cook does not talk with a princess of the imperial house." The countess's voice dripped with disdain. "You will be transferred immediately to the hunting lodge at Bad Ischl. A carriage awaits to transport you this afternoon. Your replacement has already been arranged." Daniel stared at her in shock. "But the celebration, my sugar sculpture, will be completed by others." She turned to leave, then paused. "Consider yourself fortunate. Had His Imperial Majesty been informed of this matter rather than myself, your punishment would be considerably more severe." After she left, the kitchen remained silent for several heartbeats before erupting in whispers. Herr Moser approached, his expression uncharacteristically sympathetic. "Pack your things, Kessler. When the Countess makes such a decision, there's no reversing it." "Could I at least speak with the princess?" "To explain, that would only make matters worse for both of you." Moser placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "The imperial family isn't for the likes of us, boy. We serve them, we don't befriend them." Daniel spent the afternoon in a daze, packing his few possessions. The violin Katerina had given him he wrapped carefully in his spare clothing. He wrote a brief note explaining his sudden departure, but had no means to deliver it to her. As he was escorted to the waiting carriage, he gazed back at the palace windows, wondering if she was watching, if she already knew. The hunting lodge at Bad Ischl was beautiful but isolated, particularly as autumn deepened toward winter. Daniel's duties there were simple, preparing meals for the small staff that maintained the property during the imperial family's absence. He had ample time to practice his violin and experiment with local ingredients, but his heart remained in Vienna, with the princess whose friendship had briefly illuminated his life. Weeks passed with no word from the capital. Daniel attempted to send letters to Katerina through kitchen contacts at Schönbrunn, but received no replies. As the first snows fell, he resigned himself to his exile and the likelihood that she had either forgotten him or been forbidden from contact. December brought preparations for the Christmas season, though the lodge would remain empty of imperial visitors. Daniel found solace in creating elaborate gingerbread structures and candied fruits, teaching the local kitchen maids techniques he'd perfected at court. One bitterly cold evening, as he worked alone in the lodge kitchen, he heard the distant sound of sleigh bells. Visitors were unexpected, especially after dark. He continued kneading dough for morning bread, assuming it was a delivery or perhaps staff returning from the village. Footsteps approached the kitchen, a light, quick tread he knew instantly. He turned as Katerina appeared in the doorway, snow dusting her fur-trimmed coat, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Your Highness," he breathed, hardly believing his eyes. She stepped into the warm kitchen, removing her gloves. I've spent 3 months trying to discover where they sent you. Countess Leuven was remarkably thorough in her efforts to erase your existence. How did you find me? I bribed a palace administrator. She smiled, the familiar mischievous light dancing in her eyes. It seems my years of invisibility taught me something about moving unnoticed through the court. I told the emperor I wished to spend Christmas in quiet reflection at Bad Ischl, given the recent Balkan conflicts. He was so shocked by my sudden interest in politics that he agreed without question. Daniel wanted to reach for her hands but restrained himself. It's dangerous for you to be here. If they discover? They already think the worst of me, she interrupted. A diplomatic failure, an embarrassment hidden in plain sight. She moved closer. But something changed these past months. Our conversations in the garden reminded me of who I was before the court stripped away my sense of self. Katerina, I missed hearing you say my name, she said softly. In the orangery, when you thought I couldn't hear, you whispered it once. The admission hung between them, charged with unspoken meaning. Daniel struggled to maintain the propriety their positions demanded. The distance between us cannot be bridged. You know this. The world is changing, Daniel. The old empire is crumbling at its foundations. Even the emperor's closest advisors whisper about what will come after Franz Joseph. Even so, I'm a cook. You're a princess of the imperial house. A forgotten princess, she corrected him. And you're the only person who has ever truly seen me. Not my title, not my value as a diplomatic pawn, but me. Snow fell more heavily outside, insulating the lodge in a blanket of white silence. In the kitchen's warmth, Daniel showed Katerina how to shape the bread dough, guiding her hands through the motions. The simple domesticity of the act felt more intimate than any declaration. As Christmas approached, they established a careful routine. During the day, Katerina maintained her role as an imperial princess in residence, attended by the small staff who had accompanied her from Vienna. In the evenings, she would slip down to the kitchen where Daniel prepared special dishes for her and played the violin she had given him. I've been thinking, she said one night as they sat before the kitchen fire, about my position at court. Your exile, you mean? It's been a prison of sorts, but also a strange freedom. The emperor has forgotten me, which means I've been released from many obligations that would otherwise consume my life. She traced patterns on the wooden tabletop. I've been corresponding with my cousin Sophia, who married into the Swedish nobility. She manages an extensive household and charitable foundation near Stockholm. Daniel listened, sensing she was working toward something significant. She's invited me to join her household, ostensibly as a companion but really to help administer their educational initiatives for young women. Katerina's eyes shone with purpose. The emperor would likely permit it, a convenient way to remove his embarrassing grandniece from court without scandal. You would leave Vienna? Daniel felt a conflicting surge of sadness and hope. I would leave a Habsburg court, she corrected. And I would need a trusted household manager to accompany me. Someone skilled in organizing kitchen operations, managing supplies, perhaps even teaching culinary arts to young women seeking employment skills. Daniel's heart quickened. Katerina, in Sweden, the rigid hierarchies of the Habsburg Empire hold less sway, she continued. A princess who works alongside her staff to educate disadvantaged girls would be considered progressive, not scandalous. You've thought this through carefully. I've had 3 months of clarity, thanks to you. She reached across the table to touch his hand. You showed me my own worth beyond my title. I want to do meaningful work, Daniel. And I want you beside me as I do it. As your cook, he asked, needing to understand exactly what she proposed. As my partner, she answered simply. In whatever capacity the world will allow us, and in private, as much more. Her fingers tightened around his. I know it asks much of you, to leave your homeland, your position. My position was taken from me the moment Countess Leuven decided I'd overstepped, he reminded her. And homeland is where one makes it. He turned his hand to clasp hers properly. I would follow you to Sweden, to America, to the moon if that's where your path led. Snow continued to fall outside the windows, enclosing them in a world of their own making. Daniel knew there would be obstacles ahead, permissions to secure, arrangements to make, a careful navigation of societal expectations, but in that moment, with Katerina's hand warm in his, the future stretched before them like an unwritten recipe, full of possibilities. Spring came early to Stockholm that year. In the gardens of the Bergstrom estate, apple blossoms drifted on mild breezes as young women gathered around outdoor tables, learning to prepare traditional Swedish dishes under Daniel's guidance. From the terrace, Katerina watched the cooking lesson with satisfaction. 6 months had passed since they had left Austria-Hungary, slipping away with the Emperor's reluctant blessing and Countess Löwen's barely concealed relief. Here, among her Swedish relatives, Katerina had found purpose in establishing a training program for young women from impoverished backgrounds. Daniel looked up from his demonstration and caught her eye, his smile holding the private knowledge of what they had built together, a life that honored both their talents while gradually, carefully dismantling the barriers between them. Later that evening, as they walked alone through the blooming gardens, Daniel took her hand openly, no longer needing to hide their connection. "The Duchess of Holland has invited us to her summer residence," Katerina told him. "Apparently, word of your cooking has reached court circles. And will the former Habsburg princess accompany her household manager on this visit?" he asked with a smile. "She will indeed. The Swedish aristocracy finds our arrangement refreshingly modern." She laughed softly. "How strange that what would have been our destruction in Vienna is merely considered eccentric here." Daniel stopped beneath a flowering cherry tree, its petals occasionally drifting down around them like snow. "I've been thinking about our future," he said, suddenly serious. "Have you?" "In Sweden, the laws regarding marriage are different. More accommodating to unconventional arrangements." Katerina's breath caught. "Daniel, are you not proposing?" "Not yet." He smiled. "But asking if you might consider the possibility when the time is right. When we've established ourselves fully here, when your educational foundation is secure." "I would consider it," she said, eyes bright with unshed tears. "More than consider it." He touched her cheek gently. "The forgotten princess and the palace cook. Who would have thought?" "I was never forgotten," she corrected him. "Not by you. You saw my worth when everyone else saw only my failure to be what they wanted." As cherry blossoms continued to fall around them, Daniel kissed her beneath the open Swedish sky, no hiding, no orangery walls to shield them, no imperial protocols to separate them. Just two people who had discovered that sometimes the most valuable ingredients are those overlooked by others, waiting for the right hands to transform them into something extraordinary.